Gentlemen, pause for just a moment and visualize this scene. You walk into a lounge, a dinner party, or even a casual coffee shop on a weekday afternoon. Across the room, or perhaps just a few seats away, there's a woman who immediately draws your attention. Not because she's trying to, she simply is. She carries herself with quiet self-possession. A subtle smile playing at the corners of her mouth as she listens to someone speak. Her posture is open yet composed. Her eyes scan the room briefly, and for a split second they meet yours. In that instant, most men feel the familiar rush, the impulse to approach quickly, to compliment her appearance, to fill the silence with questions, to show immediate and unmistakable interest. And that precisely is where the majority go wrong. Statistics circulated in dating and psychology discussions often cite a figure around 97%. Roughly 97% of men never fully grasp the deeper psychological mechanisms that govern female attraction and emotional investment. They operate on outdated scripts: be nice, be persistent, be available, without understanding how those behaviors are frequently interpreted on the receiving end. Today, that changes for you. We are going to systematically unpack 5 powerful psychological insights, secrets, if you will, rooted in decades of research from evolutionary psychology, social psychology, behavioral economics, attachment theory, neuroscience, and observational studies of real-world dynamics. These are not manipulative tactics. They are evidence-based understandings of how women process interest, safety, value, desire, and connection. By internalizing and applying these 5 principles, you move from being another face in the crowd to being the man who stands out not through noise or force, but through precision, self-mastery, and genuine understanding. Let's begin. Secret number 1, the principle of measured detachment, also known in popular discussions as the illusion of indifference, though that phrase can sound colder than the reality. The accurate description is measured detachment, a controlled, intentional display of independence and selective availability. This principle directly opposes the common advice: show her you're interested right away. In truth, excessive early availability often reduces perceived value. Why? Because human beings, men and women alike, are wired to value what is scarce. Robert Cialdini documented this decades ago in his seminal work on influence. Scarcity increases demand. When an opportunity feels unlimited, we devalue it. When it feels limited or uncertain, attention sharpens, curiosity spikes, investment grows. Apply that to attraction. Evolutionary psychology, through large-scale cross-cultural research by David Buss and others, consistently shows that women place high priority on traits signaling emotional stability, resource acquisition ability, and social status. Over-eagerness can unintentionally signal the opposite: lower self-value, neediness, or lack of options. Measured detachment communicates the reverse: my time and attention are valuable. I choose where they go. How do you actually do this without coming across as aloof or arrogant? 1. In person, make eye contact. Hold it 2-3 seconds with a small, genuine half smile. Then break it naturally and return focus to what you were doing or to another person in the group. Do not stare. Do not immediately walk over. 2. When conversation starts, contribute value. An interesting observation, a thoughtful question, then let silences breathe. Do not fill every gap. After 4-6 minutes of strong exchange, excuse yourself politely. I enjoyed this. I'll let you get back to your friends. I need to say hello to someone. I'm heading to grab a drink. Walk away on a high note. Let me give you a concrete case. A client, mid-30s, tech entrepreneur, previously very nice guy in his approach, kept wondering why women lost interest after the first date. We reframed his behavior. At a networking mixer, he noticed an attractive woman in conversation. Instead of approaching directly, he positioned himself nearby, engaged someone else in meaningful talk. She glanced over twice. 20 minutes later, she moved closer and opened with, "I heard you mention that project in Berlin. How did that turn out?" He answered briefly, asked one sharp follow-up question, then said, "Good talking with you. I'm going to circulate a bit." He left the interaction at peak energy. She found him again 15 minutes later. That single shift, ending on his terms, showing he wasn't tethered, flipped the dynamic. She began investing texting first, suggesting the next meet-up. Neurologically, this makes sense. Studies using fMRI show that uncertain rewards activate the ventral striatum and release more dopamine than predictable rewards. The brain literally works harder to resolve the uncertainty. meaning she thinks about you more. Important caveats: this is not playing hard to get. In the childish sense, if she's clearly disengaged, detachment becomes disinterest, read signals. Also, cultural context matters. In more traditional or conservative settings, too much early detachment can be misread as rudeness. Adjust calibration, slightly warmer baseline, but still maintain frame. Measured detachment is the foundation. It creates space for the next principle to land with impact, which brings us to secret number 2, the power of subtle leadership. This principle is frequently misunderstood. Many men hear leadership and picture dominance in the aggressive, overbearing sense, barking orders, interrupting, insisting on having the final word. That is not what works with high-value women in modern contexts. What actually creates attraction and comfort is subtle, calibrated leadership, the quiet ability to guide decisions, provide direction, and create structure without ever making her feel controlled or diminished. Evolutionary psychology draws a clear line here. David Buss and other researchers have repeatedly found that women across cultures rate dominance highly, but only when it manifests as social dominance through competence, confidence, and protectiveness, not through coercion or intimidation. A more precise term from recent literature is prestige-based dominance versus force-based dominance. Prestige wins long-term interest. Force triggers defenses or repulsion. In one influential study published in Evolutionary Psychology, participants rated male profiles. Men described as decisive leaders who took initiative in group settings scored dramatically higher on attractiveness for both short-term and long-term relationship. The men who deferred excessively or appeared indecisive ranked lowest. Why does this happen? Because subtle leadership signals several high-value traits at once. Capability to handle uncertainty and make good decisions, emotional regulation under pressure, willingness to take responsibility, capacity to provide safety and direction in a chaotic world. So how do you demonstrate this in real interactions without crossing into controlling behavior? First date example, instead of the classic, what do you want to do? Where do you want to eat? Exchange that puts the burden on her and signals indecision. Say, I've got a place in mind, small spot, with great ambience and solid food. I think you'll like it. We can head there at 70-30, sound good. Notice the structure. You made the decision. You framed it as thoughtful. You still gave her an easy opt-out. If she counters with a preference or concern, adapt smoothly. Fair point. There's also a quieter rooftop option nearby. Which feels better to you? You maintain leadership while showing flexibility and attunement. Another real-world case, a client in his early 40s, recently divorced, kept ending up in friend zone dynamics. His pattern was excessive deference, always asking her opinion first, letting her choose everything. After shifting to subtle leadership, he planned a weekend activity. I booked us for a private cooking class Saturday afternoon, Mediterranean theme. Dress comfortably. I'll pick you up at 2. She later told him it was refreshing. She didn't have to carry the mental load of planning. The evening flowed because he had already handled logistics, chosen a venue that matched her interests, and led the experience with calm confidence. During the class, he guided her hands on when needed, offered quiet corrections without making her feel incompetent, and took charge of plating and wine pairing. She relaxed into the moment instead of overthinking. Result, she initiated the next 3 dates herself. This ties directly into attachment theory. Women with secure or anxious attachment styles respond strongly to a partner who can act as a safe, secure base. Subtle leadership provides that base, predictability without rigidity, direction without domination. Neuroscience adds another layer. When someone else competently handles decisions, it reduces cognitive load and lowers cortisol while increasing oxytocin through trust and cooperation. Nonverbals matter enormously here. Stand tall, shoulders relaxed but broad. Speak with lower pitch, steady volume, no uptalk at sentence ends. Use open palm gestures when explaining or directing. Touch lightly and purposefully when leading. Always calibrated to her comfort. Maintain calm eye contact when making suggestions. The 2 biggest mistakes. 1. Over leadership, deciding everything unilaterally, ignoring her input. Steamrolling her preferences. This triggers resistance and loss of trust. 2. Under leadership, chronic indecision, deferring every choice, asking permission for basic things. This erodes attraction fast. The sweet spot is 70-80-20, 30% checking in and adapting. In places like Karachi or other parts of South Asia, Subtle leadership often needs an extra layer of respect and family-oriented framing. Phrases like, "I thought this would suit us both," or "my family enjoys this place." I'd like to share it with you, land better than purely individualistic commands. Read the room, traditional expectations, value chivalry and consideration alongside decisiveness. Notice how measured detachment from secret one sets the stage perfectly for subtle leadership. When you've already signaled independence and high value, your leadership feels earned rather than desperate. She trusts the man who doesn't need her approval at every step because he's already proven he has his own center. With the frame of leadership in place, we can now introduce the third secret, one that surprises many men because it seems to contradict traditional ideas of masculinity. Secret number 3. Strategic emotional openness, also called calibrated vulnerability. This is the insight that surprises most men the most. The traditional masculine script says never show weakness. Keep everything locked down, be the rock, be unbreakable, yet research and real-world results show the opposite is often far more powerful when done correctly. Strategic emotional openness does not mean crying on the first date, dumping childhood trauma, or seeking constant reassurance. It means intentionally revealing select, controlled pieces of your inner world at the right moment, in the right dose, to create emotional depth and trigger reciprocity. Let's ground this in science first. Attachment theory. It's developed by John Bowlby and expanded by researchers like Cindy Hazan and Philip Shaver, explains that humans form bonds through progressive emotional disclosure. When one person shares something personal and authentic, the other's brain registers safety, oxytocin levels rise, trust deepens, and the urge to reciprocate grows. A landmark study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology demonstrated that structured, escalating self-disclosure dramatically accelerates intimacy, even between strangers. Participants who moved from light topics to moderately personal ones reported feeling significantly closer after just 45 minutes than control groups who stayed surface level. In dating contexts, follow-up research shows that men who share calibrated vulnerability early enough to build connection, but not so early it feels needy, are rated as more attractive for long-term relationships. The key word is calibrated. Here's the formula most men miss it too soon. Too much tense perceived neediness or instability, gay attraction drops. Never too little perceived emotional unavailability or coldness, attraction plateaus or fades. Right time, right amount humanizes you, creates emotional safety, triggers her to open, gay attraction deepens rapidly. Timing guideline. First 1, 3 interactions, keep it light, share opinions, values, small preferences. Date 2, 4Z, move to moderate vulnerability. A past challenge you overcame, a value you hold strongly, a moment of doubt you faced and handled. Example phrases that land well. After my last serious relationship ended, I realized I had been avoiding difficult conversations to keep the peace. It cost me more in the long run. Now I try to address things directly, even when it's uncomfortable. I used to think success meant working 80-hour weeks forever. Then I watched someone I respected burn out completely. It made me rethink what balance actually looks like. I'm pretty independent, but I'll admit there are moments, usually late at night, when I wonder if I've built walls that are harder to take down than I expected. Real case, a client, late 30s, very successful in finance, had women describe him as perfect on paper but distant. He never shared anything personal. We introduced calibrated vulnerability on date 3 with a woman he was genuinely interested in. Over dessert, he said quietly, I spent most of my 20s chasing the next promotion, thinking that would make me feel secure. When I finally got to the top floor, I realized the view was great, but I didn't have anyone to share it with. That hit harder than I expected. He paused, took a sip of wine, met her eyes briefly, then shifted the topic lightly. Her response, she opened up about her own fear of ending up successful, but alone. The conversation went deeper naturally. By the end of the night, she was holding his hand across the table. Something she hadn't done before. That single calibrated share shifted her perception from impressive but untouchable to impressive and real. Neurologically, mutual vulnerability activates the brain's mirror neuron system and increases activity in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, areas linked to empathy, bonding, and long-term partner evaluation. It also reduces the stranger danger response. When you show you are willing to be seen, her subconscious registers, this man trusts me enough to lower his guard, I can lower mine Two major errors to avoid. Trauma dumping, sharing heavy wounds too early overwhelms her and makes her feel like your therapist too. Weaponized vulnerability. Openness, to fish for compliments or sympathy. This is covert neediness. Rule: share to connect, not to unload or manipulate. Deliver these moments with lowered voice volume, steady, direct eye contact, relaxed posture, leaning slightly in, no rush. Let the words sit for 2-3 seconds after you finish. Transition out naturally. Notice how this works best after Secret 1 and Secret 2 are already established. When she already sees you as high value and capable, your vulnerability doesn't threaten your frame, it humanizes it. The contrast makes the openness far more powerful. With emotional depth now in play, we can introduce the fourth secret, one that turns intellectual and emotional connection into physical and sexual tension. Secret number 4, the art of building anticipatory tension. This principle moves us from emotional and intellectual connection into the realm of physical and sensual anticipation. It is one of the most powerful and most underutilized tools for creating lasting attraction. Most men make one of two errors here. They either rush physical escalation, killing mystery and tension, or they remain completely platonic and safe, never introducing any sexual or sensual undercurrent, leaving her feeling like the interaction is friendly rather than romantic. The correct path is deliberate, calibrated tension building, creating a slow burning sense of what might happen next that keeps her nervous system engaged and her mind returning to you. This is rooted in basic neuroscience and behavioral psychology. Intermittent and unpredictable rewards produce far stronger dopamine responses than constant or predictable ones. Think slot machine effect. The brain becomes hooked on the possibility of payoff. In attraction, delayed or teased gratification amplifies desire more than immediate satisfaction. Studies on flirting dynamics show that women respond most positively to men who mix approach with occasional purposeful withdrawal, light touch followed by space, a suggestive comment followed by subject change, prolonged eye contact broken just before it becomes too intense. How to execute this in real time? 1. Verbal teasing and implication. Use playful, ambiguous language that hints at attraction without being overt. Examples: you have this way of looking at people that makes them wonder what you're really thinking. I'm trying to behave, but you're not making it easy. If we keep talking like this, I might have to do something about it later. Then immediately pivot to a neutral topic. The unresolved implication lingers. 2. Physical tension through proximity and withdrawal. Lean in during conversation to close distance, then lean back or turn slightly to create space again. Brief. Purposeful touch, fingers brushing her forearm when making a point, hand on lower back for 1-2 seconds while guiding through a crowd, then remove contact. Hold eye contact for 5 seconds longer than normal, let a small smile form, then break it and look away casually. 3. Sensory layering, comment on non-sexual senses to build subconscious arousal. You smell incredible. What is that? Your voice has this low, smooth quality when you laugh. It's distracting. The way the light is hitting your collarbone right now is unfairly distracting. Case from a client in his mid-30s, very analytical, previously struggled with spark, dying after initial dates. On date 2, at a dimly lit bar, he waited for a natural lull in conversation. He leaned in slightly, voice dropping. I've been trying to figure out whether you're more dangerous when you're quiet or when you're talking. She laughed, eyes widening. He held the gaze for 4 seconds, then leaned back, took a slow sip of his drink, and asked about her favorite travel memory, completely changing the subject. Throughout the evening, he repeated this pattern: brief moments of charged connection, then deliberate release. By the end of the night, she was the one initiating light touch, leaning closer unprompted, and texting first the next morning with, "Last night was different," in a good way. The psychology here is anticipation circuitry. MI studies show that the period of wanting activates reward centers more intensely than the moment of actual reward. By keeping her in the wanting state longer, you amplify emotional and physical investment. Key rules: always match her energy. If she pulls back or seems uncomfortable, immediately dial down and give more space. Never use tension as a power play or to pressure her. It must feel mutual and exciting. Avoid crude or explicit language early. Implication is far more powerful than directness at this stage. Cultural note for South Asian context: keep verbal teasing lighter and more poetic romantic at first. Physical touch remains minimal in public. Focus more on voice tone, eye contact, and proximity. This tension lands hardest when combined with the previous secrets. Your measured detachment makes the tension feel earned. Your subtle leadership makes it feel safe. Your strategic openness makes it feel meaningful. The result is layered attraction, intellectual, emotional, and physical. And now we arrive at the fifth and culminating secret. Secret number 5, recognizing and respecting the depth of her hidden desires. One of the most pervasive myths among men is that women's desires are simple, vanilla, or primarily emotional. The reality, backed by extensive sexual psychology research, is that women often harbor richer, more varied, and more intense inner fantasy lives than society typically acknowledges. Studies show that women report fantasies involving power dynamics, novelty, group scenarios, submission, dominance play, exhibitionism, and emotional intensity at rates comparable to, or in some cases exceeding, men. Yet most women rarely voice these openly due to socialization, fear of judgment, or past negative experiences. The secret is not about guessing or pushing fantasies. It is about creating an environment of absolute non-judgmental safety where she feels permission to reveal what truly excites her emotionally, sensually, and erotically. How this looks in practice. After trust is built, ask open, curious questions without pressure. What's something you've always been curious about trying but never told anyone? Is there a scenario or feeling that comes up in your mind when you're alone that you find exciting? Listen without interrupting, without judgment, without trying to fix or immediately act on it. Respond with calm acceptance. That makes complete sense. Thank you for sharing that with me. Share your own desires in reciprocity, calibrated, honest, without overwhelming. A couple reached a point where she admitted a long-held fantasy involving light restraint and being taken in a controlled way. He didn't jump to enact it immediately. Instead, he asked follow-up questions over several conversations, learned her boundaries, communicated his own, and slowly incorporated elements only after explicit enthusiastic consent. The result was deeper trust, more intense physical connection, and her describing him as the first man who ever made me feel completely seen. When a woman feels psychologically and emotionally safe enough to express her full range of desires without shame or fear, oxytocin and dopamine flood in tandem, the bond becomes exponentially stronger. You become not just a partner, but the rare man who can hold space for her entire self. Now, look at the complete picture. Measured detachment sparks initial curiosity and investment. Subtle leadership provides safety and direction. Strategic openness builds emotional intimacy. Anticipatory tension ignites physical desire. Respecting hidden depths unlocks complete authenticity and passion. Together, these 5 principles move you out of the 97% who stumble through guesswork into the small percentage who create real, lasting attraction with intention and respect. Gentlemen, you now hold the framework. It is not about manipulation. It is about understanding, about showing up as a man who is self-aware, decisive, emotionally capable, sexually attuned, and deeply respectful. Apply these consistently, starting small, calibrating to feedback, always prioritizing mutual respect, and you will notice the shift. Women invest more, open more, desire more, and stay longer. If this resonated, if you want to go deeper, get specific scripts, real-time calibration advice, or structured ways to practice each principle. Take the next step now. Subscribe to the channel for weekly breakdowns and advanced applications. Share this with one friend who needs to hear it. You'll both benefit from the conversation it sparks. And if you're ready for the full system, my in-depth guide that walks through 30-day implementation plans, exact phrasing templates, body language checklists, and mistake correction frameworks, check the description below. The link is there. Click it today. Your next interaction can be different. Make it count. Until next time, stay aware, stay intentional, stay elevated.